My phone rang. It was my brother, panicked. "Where's the money?" he demanded. The money he thought I'd quietly hand over. Again, but this time I'd shut the account. For good. "Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm 32, self-made, and done being the family's emergency fund. For years, I paid their mortgage, their cruises, their silence, while they told me I was too ambitious to deserve help. But what happens when the good daughter finally says no? If you've ever felt taken for granted by the people closest to you, I'd love to hear your story. Has your family ever treated love like a transaction?" The steam from my mug curled toward the window, blurring the still bare trees outside. Early spring in Ohio never knew how to commit too cold for comfort, too warm for snow. I had barely taken a sip of my morning coffee when my phone buzzed. "Mom." Kevin's offer was accepted. "We're so proud of him." I stared at the text, letting it sit there like a pebble in my shoe. Annoying, small, familiar. My coffee, still hot, suddenly tasted bitter. Of course Kevin got the house. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing the ache from behind my eyes. Somewhere in my chest, a small laugh wanted to come out, not from humor, but from exhaustion. I wasn't surprised. Not really. I remembered being 10, standing outside the middle school in the wind, clutching a binder full of math worksheets. I'd waited for over an hour, breath fogging up my glasses. Dad never came. Kevin had soccer practice. "Boys need structure," Mom had said later. "Girls figure things out." I figured out a lot over the years: how to build a business from nothing, how to survive layoffs and lean quarters, how to move out at 21 and never move back, and how to pay a mortgage that wasn't mine. I opened my laptop, ignoring the second text. "He's grown up so much. You'd be so proud if you just let yourself be." Proud of Kevin. I wasn't even sure what job he had now. Last I heard, he was managing inventory at a local dealership. Mom made it sound like he was running Ford. I typed in my password and pulled up my banking dashboard. One new alert. I clicked. Unsuccessful login attempt. Joint account Morgan household 3 attempts within the past hour. I sat up straighter, the chill of recognition creeping up my spine. That account hadn't been touched in months. I had closed it quietly, transferred the balance, secured the records. It had once been our family's emergency fund. Our meaning, mine. Back in 2015, when Dad was laid off, I'd deposited $20,000 to float the mortgage. In 2017, I paid $8,000 to replace the transmission in his beloved truck. In 2019, $6,300 for their anniversary cruise to Nova Scotia. Because 35 years of marriage deserve something special. I closed the alert and opened the folder titled Family Transfers. Confidential. The spreadsheet was already open from yesterday. I hadn't added anything in months. I hadn't wanted to. Each row was dated with recipient amount, reason, and status paid. Not repaid. Gift. Loan unspoken. It read like a history book written in dollar signs. 2013, $12,500, Kevin's temporary car loan. 2016, $2,000, Mom's dental implants, found in 2018. $3,700, help with Sarah's vet bills. 2019, $5,000, Kevin's rent just for 2 months. There were 47 entries. The total at the bottom glared up at me. $132,700. I stared at the number. Then I said it out loud, quietly, like trying on a coat. Never again. I clicked over to the account settings and terminated the last link. The joint account, our family's financial crutch, my lifeline to their emergencies, was now closed. For real this time. A bubble popped up on my phone. Jazz. They found out, huh? I smiled despite myself. Jazz had warned me this day would come. She always did. Yup, I typed. Cue the chaos. As if on cue, my phone started buzzing again. Kevin. I stared at the name. I didn't owe him an answer. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. I picked up. "Rachel," he said immediately, breathing hard like he'd run a mile. "Where's the money?" I said. "Nothing." Just held the phone and listened to his voice entitled Urgent cracked around the edges. "The account's empty." What the hell, Mom said? "It's closed," I replied, calm and quiet. "There's a difference." A pause. then more panic. But I need that money. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. Through the glass, a breeze shook the tree branches outside, still bare, still waiting. Just like I had once. He needed money. Again. But I had finally figured something else out too. Needing doesn't justify taking. And loving doesn't mean funding. The vase of tulips in Mom's hallway looked too perfect, like they came with a plastic tag still attached. I stepped inside, balancing a bottle of mid-range wine in one hand and my smile in the other. Rachel Mom's voice came from the kitchen. "You made it! Kevin's in the backyard and Sarah just finished the pie." Of course she did. I followed the scent of meatloaf and starch into the dining room, noting how nothing had changed since I was 16. Same tan carpet, same framed cross-stitch that read, "Family is where life begins." I took my usual seat at the far end of the table, opposite the family portraits, most of which featured Kevin. In some, he was in graduation robes. In others, football jerseys. None of me. The table was set with green bean casserole mashed potatoes, glistening with butter, and Mom's usual centerpiece of silk hydrangeas. Frank sat in his recliner nearby, flipping through the news on mute. I nodded politely. Kevin breezed in, all teeth and cologne. "Hey, sis," he said, giving me a quick, one-armed hug. "Big day, huh?" For whom I asked. He blinked, shrugged, and took the seat next to Sarah, who gave me a soft, uncomfortable smile. She looked tired, like someone trying not to be where she was. I understood the feeling. Dinner started with the usual prayer, Frank mumbling through grace while Donna beamed. Kevin took over from there. "So we're thinking navy blue for the kitchen, maybe granite counters? I know it's a stretch, but we want it to be perfect." "Perfect for what I asked. Family dinners? Game nights? Someday kids." He winked. "You'll see." Donna laughed a little too high. "He's finally settling down. Found his path. He works at a car dealership," I said. Donna's fork paused. "It's a respectable business." "I wasn't criticizing," I said calmly. "Just clarifying." Kevin cleared his throat. "Anyway, Mom said you might help with the furniture. I mean, we're tight for a bit until I close the loan, but the house is huge. Sarah can't cover everything." Sarah looked away, fixing her napkin. I took a long sip of water, then reached into my purse and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "Before we talk about furniture, maybe we should talk about history," I said, unfolding the page. Donna narrowed her eyes. "Rachel, I've been tracking it for years," I said evenly. "The transfers, the loans, the gifts that weren't gifts." Kevin sat back. "You kept receipts." "I kept records," I said. "Here's just a sample." I read from the page, my voice steady. 2015. Mortgage, $20,000. 2017. Dad's truck, $8,000. 2018. Kevin's rent, $5,000. 2019. Cruise, $6,300. 2019 again. Sarah's vet bills, $3,700. Kevin opened his mouth, then shut it. Donna's voice sharpened. "You're ruining dinner." "Dinner was ruined the day you made me your plan B." The room froze. Frank looked up from his plate. "Rachel, this isn't the time." "No," I agreed. "But it's the pattern, and patterns don't change unless someone breaks them." "I raised you better than this," Donna said, standing now, fists clenched near her hips. "We help each other. That's what family does." "No," I said, rising too. "You help Kevin, I fund the help." Sarah looked like she wanted to vanish. "I never asked," Kevin began. "You never had to ask," I cut in. The air thickened. Somewhere outside, a sprinkler clicked on, spraying a perfect arc across the manicured lawn. I folded the paper and slipped it back into my purse. "Happy Mother's Day," I said. Then I turned to go. Behind me, Frank's voice echoed through the hallway. "If you walk out now, don't bother coming back." I paused at the door. The kitchen still smelled like roast and fresh pie. I thought of 6th grade when I made honor roll for the first time, and they got Kevin a new bike that same weekend. I had gotten a frozen pizza and a "we're proud of both of you." That memory followed me down the front steps. This time I didn't turn back. The wine bar was tucked between a yoga studio and a boutique that only sold sustainable linen. The kind of place I'd walked by a dozen times but never entered. Tonight, the windows glowed amber against the frost-streaked sidewalk, and leftover pumpkins from Halloween still sagged on a nearby stoop. Thanksgiving was 3 days away, but gratitude was in short supply this year. Natalie was already seated at a corner table when I arrived, dark red wine in front of her eyes, sharp behind square-framed glasses. She looked exactly as I remembered from childhood, just older, harder around the edges. I hadn't seen her since the summer of Grandma Lucia's estate hearing. Back then, I was told Natalie had mental clarity issues, that she was unstable and too dramatic to be involved in legal matters. She looked pretty damn stable to me. "Hey," I said cautiously. Natalie gave me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Rachel," she gestured to the chair across from her. "Glad you reached out. I ordered a glass of something red and dry, then sat. We stared at each other for a beat. Two women with the same blood finally meeting on neutral ground. So I started. The message you sent. They did it to me too, Natalie said. The will, the money, the lies." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small leather folder. Inside were documents scanned, annotated, highlighted. She spread them like playing cards. "This," she tapped a signature, "isn't mine. This is the form that gave full control of Grandma's Italian property to Aunt Donna. It needed unanimous consent from all grandchildren. I never signed it." I leaned in. The signature looked familiar. Not like hers, not like mine, more like something traced. They sold the villa 3 months after the will was executed, transferred the funds through an old family account tied to Mom and Kevin. My throat tightened. How much? Just under $400,000. Split mostly, except for you. I sat back. I was never even told it existed. Natalie nodded. "Same here, until I pulled public sale records in Florence. I didn't know whether to laugh or throw up." She kept going. "That's when I started collecting things. Screenshots, emails, bank transfers, even WhatsApp messages from Mom and Aunt Lydia planning how to make me look unstable in front of the estate attorney." "That's what they called you," I said. "Unstable." Her smile returned cold this time. Of course they did. I took a slow sip of wine, then pulled out my phone. I opened the spreadsheet I hadn't touched since the Mother's Day dinner. Natalie watched me quietly. Still tracking. "Always," I said. "Numbers don't lie. People do." I scrolled to the most recent entry, 2019. $40,000. Mom's knee surgery fund. Something prickled. "That money," I said slowly. "Mom told me she never used it, that her insurance finally covered everything." Natalie raised an eyebrow. "You believe her? I didn't. I opened my banking history, then opened the record of Mom's transfer to Kevin that same month. $39,880, labeled gift." My fingers hovered over the screen. "I sent her that money for medical expenses," I said. "And she gave it to Kevin." Natalie finished. I sat back in my chair. That was supposed to be the safety net. I was trying to do the right thing. Natalie nodded. So was I. It's what they rely on. Guilt, legacy, the illusion of obligation. My phone buzzed. Jazz. What if they fall apart without you and that's okay? I stared at the screen for a long time. When I looked up, Natalie had placed a USB drive on the table between us. Small, unassuming. The kind of thing people overlook until it explodes everything. "What's this?" I asked. "Everything I've collected," she said. "Emails, screenshots, legal copies, tax records, timelines, proof of fraud, financial coercion, and manipulation." I touched the drive, then looked at her. "You've been doing this alone for years." "I had to," she said. "No one believed me." "I do," I said quietly. For a moment, her eyes softened. Then she leaned back and sipped her wine. "So, she asked you ready to fight smart?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." Later that night, back in my apartment, I reopened the spreadsheet. The cursor blinked, waiting. I added a new line, 2020. $40,000. Misused medical fund. Reclassified fraud. Then I opened my email. To Marcus Bell, subject line, urgent. Attachment, family ledger, Dax SLSX. It was time. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 p.m. like a deadline. I glanced at the security feed on my laptop. Mom stood at the door in a pale blue cardigan clinging to a worn leather folder like it held her last ounce of grace. Dad loomed behind her jaw-tight expression carved from granite. Kevin shifted from foot to foot, his shirt already darkened under the arms. They were expecting a confrontation, maybe even a scene. What they got was an audit. I didn't open the door right away. I wanted them to sit in their discomfort just a moment longer. Inside the condo was silent, save for the faint hum of my laptop fan. I had set the thermostat a few degrees lower than usual, enough to make people uncomfortable, but not enough for them to complain. This wasn't going to be comfortable. I buzzed them in. Natalie sat on the couch, legs crossed, expression unreadable. A notepad rested on her lap. My laptop sat open on the kitchen counter screen, split on one side the spreadsheet, on the other, a Zoom window. Marcus Bell adjusted his glasses as the video loaded. "Ready?" Natalie asked. I nodded. "Let's begin." They walked in like they owned the place until they saw the setup. My condo wasn't warm or inviting tonight. No snacks, no coffee, just folders, a laptop, and 2 cold glasses of water. Donna's eyes flicked from Natalie to the screen. "What is all this a conversation?" I said. "But this time I'm setting the terms." Frank's voice was flat. "We're family. We shouldn't need lawyers." Marcus's calm voice cut in through the laptop. "Good evening. I'm here as an observer and advisor. You may want to reconsider that statement, Mr. Morgan." Donna's cheeks flushed. "We're not here to fight. We just want to understand why Rachel's been so distant. I raised an eyebrow. "Is that the word we're using now?" Kevin sat down heavily. "Can we just skip the games? You closed the account. Now no one can access anything. That money was for emergencies." "For your emergencies," I corrected. I opened a folder and slid a printed chart across the table. It was titled, Family Ledger 2013-2020. Donna didn't touch it. Frank skimmed it and frowned. Kevin stared at it like it was in a different language. "These are all the payments I've made to this family over the past 7 years," I said. "Mortgage loans, car repairs, cruise rent, and of course the infamous down payment fund." Donna's hand went to her throat. "We never asked you to." "Didn't have to." I tapped a line on the chart. May 2020. $40,000. Labeled Medical Fund. "Supposed to be for your surgery, Mom." Kevin shifted uncomfortably. "But according to this, Natalie said pulling out another sheet the same month a transfer of $39 in and $8 went directly into Kevin's house account." Donna's voice cracked. "We did what we had to do. Kevin needed help. And you decided I didn't," I asked, my tone flat. "Or did you just assume I'd always have more?" "You're successful," Frank said. "You could afford it. That's not the point," I said, keeping my voice level. "You took from me without asking. And then you lied about it." Kevin slammed his hand on the table. "You're tearing this family apart over money." I didn't flinch. "No, I'm tearing off the mask you all built when I was forced to wear for years. The reliable one. The fixer. The one who never asks, never breaks, never says no." Marcus cleared his throat through the laptop. "Just to be clear, the forgery of consent forms regarding the Italian villa and the misappropriation of funds from a designated medical account are both legally actionable." Frank leaned back in his chair. "You're threatening us now." "No," I said. "I'm documenting you." Natalie slid forward a slim manila envelope. "These are the estate papers, bank records, and altered signature samples. I've verified them with the notary." Donna finally looked at her. "You always had a problem with this family." Natalie smiled. "No, I had a problem with how this family operated. Big difference." I stood then, walked to the kitchen, picked up one final sheet I had printed before they arrived. I placed it on the table gently. Kevin's house account, traced back, funded by the $40,000 I had earmarked for Mom's surgery. I looked directly at them. "You stole from me," I said, voice even, and called it love. The silence was heavy, cold. Donna reached for a pen hand, trembling. She looked at me once before signing the acknowledgement form Marcus had emailed earlier, a small act, but for her seismic. Frank sat motionless, the pen untouched. "Are we done?" he asked quietly. I nodded once. "For tonight." He stood. Donna followed her folder, now clutched like a shield. Kevin lingered a moment longer before muttering something I didn't bother to catch. As they left, I turned back to Natalie, who had barely moved. "You did it," she said. "You flipped the power." I sat down suddenly, aware of the ache behind my eyes. "Yeah," I whispered, "but the cleanup's just beginning." I hovered over the post button heart, hammering harder than it had during any family confrontation. The screen glowed with the title I had agonized over. My parents gave my brother $200,000 and told me I was too ambitious for help. I read it again. Then I clicked. The cursor spun, then stilled. It was live. Jazz was sitting across from me at Bean and Barrel, stirring her cold brew with the intensity of a scientist. The cafe was humming with late June energy ceiling fans. Word sunlight slanted through half-drawn blinds, and someone in a sundress laughed too loudly at a nearby table. It was one of those afternoons that didn't care what your world looked like inside. Done. Jazz asked, eyes sharp over her straw. "Done?" I said, exhaling. She nodded. "It'll spread." At first it didn't. 10 minutes passed. Then a ping. 1 comment. Then 5. Then 30. I watched the numbers climb like a tide with no intention of retreating. Upvotes, reposts, direct messages. My brother drained our mom's retirement and blamed me for not helping him rebuild. "Thank you." I didn't know how to say this out loud. "Same here. This saved me." My fingers hovered over my phone, scrolling as testimonials flooded in. Women mostly. A few men. All with stories wrapped in guilt and expectation, all stunned by the realization that they weren't alone. "You're a damn mirror," Jazz muttered, watching the screen. "And nobody likes to see themselves clearly." I nodded, silent. An email pinged next, a journalist from a local media outlet. Then another from an editor at a national blog. Natalie, always 3 steps ahead, forwarded a draft statement she'd started preparing the night before. "In families where silence is currency, speaking up is rebellion." That was the first line. I kept it. By nightfall, Kevin had gone live on Facebook. The video was grainy, taken from the front seat of his car. He looked wrecked, splotchy face, wet eyes, and that same performative vulnerability I'd seen at Thanksgiving when the pie ran out and he didn't get the last slice. "She made me look like a criminal," he said, sniffing. "I mean, yeah, I needed help, but she was always better at money. And now she's out here, turning the world against her own family." The comments were merciless. "Maybe stop living off her then." "She didn't make you look like anything. You did that yourself." My sister saved me from a mess like this. Rachel is brave. I should have felt triumphant. I felt exposed. My phone buzzed with a private message from a woman named Leah. "I read your post. It made me check my credit. My mom took out a loan in my name 4 years ago. I had no idea. Thank you." Another message. Then 10 more. Each one felt like a confession from a stranger who had been waiting for someone else to go first. I was still staring at my inbox when Jazz slid her phone across the table. Look, it was a sign-up sheet. Daughters Rising, a virtual support group for women recovering from familial financial abuse. 30 women, she said. Already. I stared at the list of names. First names only. Dozens of them. I nodded slowly. "We're just getting started." In this folder, I said, holding it up to the room, is every dollar they said was love, and every time it came with a price tag. The silence in the community hall stretched long and respectful. Dozens of women looked back at me from their folding chairs, some nodding, some already misty-eyed, some clutching notebooks with pens poised. Name tags curled slightly in the dry March air. Styrofoam cups of lukewarm coffee steamed faintly beside tote bags and sensible purses. It was our first workshop, Daughters Freedom Fund. Session 1. Jazz had arranged everything, of course. She flitted between the sign-in table and the snack station, pouring energy into every detail like this was a live concert, and she was both host and headliner. Natalie, grounded as ever, sat near the projector, managing tech and making sure I had the right slides queued. I set the folder down and stepped away from the podium. "I grew up believing love came with silence," I began. That if I just gave enough, worked enough, fixed enough, I'd finally be seen as worthy. But I was only ever seen as useful. A few women nodded. I told them about the audit, about the spreadsheet, about Kevin's house and the money that was supposed to be for Mom's surgery. I told them how Natalie had shown me what theft looked like in nice handwriting and polite conversation. I didn't cry, but I let my voice shake when it needed to. They deserved the truth without polish. One woman in the second row whispered, "Yes," so quietly it sounded like breath. When the session ended, applause rose and fell like a soft tide. Some women stayed seated, lost in thought. Others gathered around the coffee table, exchanging stories in the language only survivors know. That's when I saw her, Donna, my mother, standing in the back, spine straight but eyes dim. She hadn't signed up, hadn't said she was coming. But there she was, in a familiar cardigan, hands clutching an envelope like it was armor. She waited until most of the women had drifted away before stepping forward. "Rachel," she said. Natalie rose beside me, silent but present. I nodded. I could handle this. Donna looked at the floor, then up at me. "I forged Natalie's name," she said softly. I told myself it was just easier that way, that it was all staying in the family, but I've started paying her back. Little by little. I said nothing. She continued. "We sold the house. Frank and I moved to a condo near Grove City. Smaller. Simpler." I felt a strange ache in my chest. Not triumph. Something else. Something like space. "Kevin filed for bankruptcy last month," she added. "You were listed as a creditor. I know you didn't respond." "No," I said. "I didn't," Donna swallowed. "We thought you'd never fight back. You were always so good." I looked her in the eye. "I'm still good," I said, "just not convenient." She nodded once, like she understood more than she wanted to, then turned and left without another word. That night, in the quiet of my condo, I opened the spreadsheet one last time. The cursor blinked at the bottom of a decade's worth of numbers and footnotes. I saved it. Family Ledger, XLSX. Final. Then I opened a new tab. Freedom Ledger. Community Edition. Blank, bright, full of potential. I typed the first line. Name. Story. Amount taken. Amount reclaimed. Then I exhaled and kept typing. Looking at the blank spreadsheet titled Freedom Ledger, Community Edition, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because I'd stopped pretending it wasn't broken. Sometimes love needs boundaries to grow right, and sometimes being a good daughter means standing tall, not staying silent. In families and in life, healing often begins the moment we speak the truth out loud. If this story reminded you of someone or stirred something in you, I hope you'll share it with a friend, a daughter, or even just yourself.